So it's time for the full review of these two Honda dirt bikes. We got the which one is it? CRF450RX right here, CRF250RX right here. We are going to smash any other review you've ever seen, and we're gonna do it right now. Gosh, I am so excited about these bikes. I love having the red in the shop, and I've loved having these Hondas. I've had a lot of different Hondas in the past, smaller bikes, bigger bikes, whatever, but these two things take the cake. And I'm so excited that I had the chance to get the 450 and the 250 at the same time, because I definitely learned some things not only about these bikes, but some things about myself, and confirm some suspicions that I might have had, and have really just had a blast doing it. This video is about 6 months in the making, maybe a little less. I have had the 450 longer than the 250, and I'm just gonna combine this review with both of them because there's only some minor differences, and we'll touch on that as we go forward. But honestly, this has been super amazing. If you're watching this on June 30th, please remember that you can still get entered to win these bikes. It ends June 30th at midnight, and 2 people are gonna win these things. Go to my website, dirtbikechannel.com, and get entered. Now, let's get into the full review. I should also mention that I set these two bikes up exactly the same with the same tires and tubeless, and the same amount of sag on the suspension, the same skid plates. Everything was the exact same on these bikes, just a different color on my fork guards here. But I learned a ton about which one I liked more. Obviously, which bike is this one? Obviously the 450 takes a little bit more effort to turn, which we talked about. The 250 is a little bit more nimble. They both offer some serious advantages, but when I set them up the same, it was really fun to kind of switch back and forth and see the nuances in those motors. And it gave me a new appreciation for the 450s and the 250s and what they can bring to the table and why that might be something that you would want. You can email me if you have questions about which one you think you should buy, and we can go through that. First thing I need to get out of the way is that Honda knows how to make a bloody dirt bike. These things are absolutely stellar, and if you bought one of these things, I'm sure that you could find a happy spot with both of them, because I certainly have. Sometimes these review videos tend to be a little bit long, so let me just give you a breakdown of what's gonna happen. I'm gonna talk to you about the things that I think are great, the things that I think are good, the things that I think need improvement, and then the things that they totally whiffed on and they suck. But I will also say that I'm gonna spend a little bit more time on the needs improvement stuff. I'm not gonna spend as much time praising these bikes because I could praise them all day long, and I don't know that that's why you're here. What you need is the straight talk. You need to think about with these bikes. See, I paid full price for these bikes. Honda has given me nothing, and I'm going to just speak my mind about these things and give you some things to really think about. So here are the things that are great, and the first thing I'm gonna say is these bikes are freaking hot. They look so good. Now, the RX versions don't look quite as good as the R versions because you've got this big fuel tank here, but it does give you some extra range with the fuel tank, and that's the only thing I really don't like about the way these bikes look. Chase Sexton, Jett Lawrence, Ken Roczen, Hunter Lawrence, those guys are all riding red, and these bikes are sick, and if you wanna look like those guys out there in the desert or whatever, that would be a way to go because they are absolutely incredible. The other thing that I think is great, especially for the 250 version, is I can take the 250 version to the track. I know it has desert suspension, but I'm not like a guy that is pushing so hard and doing such big jumps that that bike doesn't work for me at the track. This bike would as well, I'm just not that great at it. So those are a couple things that are really fantastic. I love the fact that I could have this bike, I can ride it in the desert, I can ride it in the mountains, and I can take it to the track. That is killer for me, and that's 2 thumbs up. The other thing that's great about these bikes is they just stay so planted and they stay so stable and straight and true. It is really difficult to get these bikes out of shape. Very, very difficult. I will say that the 450 version is a little bit more stable and she stays a little bit more balanced, but that 250 over there, that Honda 250RX, is the most stable planted bike that I've had in a long time. There's just something about it that makes these things stay straight, and that gives you confidence when you're out there on the trails or you're out there on the track or in the desert. That's an amazing thing. The other thing I love and I think is great is the 250RX corners like a dream. And I'm telling you, and it's a thing, 254 strokes, it's my favorite thing about them is they corner like a dream, and these things can make you feel like a hero. The 450 probably has the ability to corner like a dream, but for me it's just a little bit too much power and I feel much more comfortable cornering on the 250. And now we transition into the things that are good. And the first thing I want to say is the valving choices that they made on the forks of 450 and the 250. This is more of a desert style suspension. It's not super plush, but they actually achieved a pretty good balance here, especially on the Showa forks, is because it doesn't deflect a lot, but it also isn't like too soft. It really kind of feels like the Yamaha YZ250FX that I had a couple of years ago. That was a KYB suspension. And honestly, I think this performs just as good as that. It might be a touch softer than that KYB suspension was. Hard to know because I couldn't ride the bikes back to back, but I do feel like they have a very good balance here. And it was the thing that really surprised me the most when I first got on the 450 and the 250 is just how good that front fork felt. And it stays in really nice balance with the rear. That's one of the things I said is amazing, is the bike stays balanced. So they did a really good job of kind of cutting the difference here and making this fork work in a lot of different areas. The other thing I want to talk about as good, and sometimes I say this is great on other bikes, but I'm just saying it's good on these bikes, it would be the motor. See, they've got a map switch up here where you have 3 different maps that you can choose from. You've got like a standard map, you've got a soft map, and you've got a hot map. Now, and it actually does change the characteristics of these motors quite a bit. On the 450, I actually rode quite a bit for a while in the softer map, and that makes the bike feel really mellow. It makes it feel like it's not gonna eat your head off or tear your head off or whatever. And then I also ran a lot in the standard map, and I think they did a really good job. It's got it's got a really awesome sound to it, and it is just, they did a really good job of making this thing so it isn't like a fire-breathing dragon. When you do put it on the hot map, it is a fire-breathing dragon, and I didn't like it as much on that map. On the 250, I had no use for the soft map on the 250, and I did feel like it was a little bit soft compared to the Yamaha when it was on the standard map. So most of the time I ran the 250 on the hot map, and that made it feel a little bit more alive, and that was my favorite on on the 250 version. But I will say I don't think that motor is quite as snappy, and I don't think it pulls quite as hard as the Yamaha does. That isn't a reason not to get it. It's just something that you got to know. If you're wanting the most power, the most snap, I think the Yamaha version, the Yamaha 250FX, is a little bit snappier than that Honda, but still really loved it. Okay, so another thing that's good, and you might laugh at this because like, Kyle, why would you talk about this? And I would say these bikes start really well, and that's good. See, not all 4-strokes start super great, especially when they get hot. And turns out, all right, here we go. That I was just like drawn. I get emails from people all the time on their Kawasaki's and on their Yamahas saying, and even some of their KTM saying when the bike is hot, it cranks for like a couple seconds before it fires. And sometimes if you've got your throttle open at all, they don't want to start. In my experience, these Honda bikes have actually been some of the best starters as far as like quickly firing over and just going of the 4-strokes that I've had in recent memory. So kudos to Honda on figuring out how to make a motor that will run super well and that will start relatively quickly. Other things that are good, the brakes on the bikes are good. They both run Nissan brakes, so you've got a hydraulic brake on both the 250 and the 450. You've got a Nissan brake down on the rear. Good brake, nothing wrong with there. I've always said I do prefer the feel of a Brembo brake because I feel like you have a little bit more power on those things, but it's something that you get used to. As far as clutches, on the 450 version, interestingly enough, you get a hydraulic clutch, and it's very good. Over here on the 250 version, you get a cable clutch. Now, I will say it's interesting because it's almost like both have a pretty good feel. And it's not a reason that you shouldn't get the 250 because it has a cable clutch, but it's something to think about. Some guys love the cable clutch because you never have to bleed it, but then obviously you have some cabling issues and sometimes it can kind of get gritty down there. I don't know. I'm a little bit interested why they didn't put a hydraulic clutch on the 250, but when I was riding it, it was never really a factor for me, and so I just thought I'd bring it up to you. Okay, on to the things that I think need improvement. Both of these bikes, the 250 and the 450 version, have the motocross gearbox. It's a 5-speed gearbox and they work great on motocross. And for a lot of things, a lot of places, if you're on the trails or in the desert, the 5-speed isn't horrible. However, it is, at this point, my biggest gripe with these bikes. I wish that Honda would have actually put a 6-speed transmission in these things to really differentiate it from the motocross bikes and give it the legs that it needs to go out there and make some of these transitions when we're out there in the trails and we're out there in the desert. You will find that you hit top gear in these bikes faster than you want to, at least faster than I want to, and then you're revving the bikes to the moon to get going 55, 60, down some transition area. I'd much rather have one more gear and have a little bit of an overdrive on these things, and that is my biggest gripe. And honestly, that is what would make me probably choose, well, one of the things that would make me choose a Yamaha YZ250FX over these Honda versions, just because of the transmissions. It's that big of a deal to me. It's not like a deal breaker, but it's a pretty big deal to me. These suckers need 6 speeds. Another thing, not a huge deal, but the handguards are a little short. Now, I am thankful that Honda gave us handguards, but the handguards are attached to the clutch perches here, and I just think this thing needs to come out another like 2 inches to actually be useful for you. Once I slide my levers in a little bit in order to protect my levers from breaking, this handguard is pretty short, and if I've got my hand out here on the edge of the bar like that, it kind of ends up being a little bit exposed. So they could have just lengthened that out just a touch, just something to nitpick on here a little bit, but that's something I think we could do better on. Whether this needs improvement, I don't know. It's just something to note. When I got the 450 version, I had bolts on this bike that were tighter than anything I'd ever seen, and I've purchased more than 60 motorcycles in the last little bit. In fact, this axle nut back here, this was on so bloody tight. I've got like an 18-inch breaker bar here, and I about tipped the bike off the stand just trying to get that sucker loose. Same thing happened on the front. Like, there are bolts all over. And is it just one bike? No, because this 250 over here, everything was literally so freaking tight. I just bring that up because I'm like, holy crap, Honda, like, what was happening? These bikes couldn't have been assembled on the same day, but they were really, really tight. So on a bike like this, you'd want to go through all your bolts just see if you can take them off, because there's no way I would have been able to take that wheel off out on the trail with my shorter trail wrench. Just something to keep in mind if you get a Honda, and let me know down in the comments or email me if you had the same thing with your Honda, because both of these were the same for me. Something I think needs improvement, or at least needs to be addressed, is the battery. So the battery box is right down here, right under the frame, and although it's relatively protected, I don't think it's that well weather protected, because water can slink in here behind where the wires come out of this battery cover. And it also is in a place where I've seen so many times when people like tip over on a trail or in a nasty situation, and you've got a rock or a stick that comes up and boom, can slam that. Unlike the KTMs and a lot of the other bikes that people are doing in like desert stuff, people are trying to harden this side of the bike. And I've got the engine cases on right here, these engine covers from a Cherubies. But this is a little bit of a concern to me. Most of the battery boxes that I've seen are under the seat, hidden from the elements and hidden from damage in a better way than these Honda battery boxes are. So I just thought I'd bring that up. Some of you guys know I'm a snob for bikes that turn tight. These Honda bikes do not turn very tight. There are stops here that are built into the triple clamps that come in contact with the frame right here. And they've actually limited this bike so there's a lot more room that it could turn here against the frame. And there's plenty of clearance between these radiators and the forks. But they've just made, this bike is just for doing motocross. And they haven't even thought about the fact that if you get a bike that turns tighter, you're able to do switchbacks and you're able to do some of these other like balancing drills way more easily. So I didn't actually measure the turning radius with a measuring stick or a tape measure, but I can tell you these are not very tight turning bikes. And if you were gonna do switchbacks or you're gonna do like balance stuff or any sort of trials, I know they're not trials bikes, but the point is, I would like to see these bikes turn tighter. Usually it's a limitation of the radiators on bikes. This one is not that. And these could turn way tighter. I know Honda's never gonna do anything about that, but I just wanted to bring it up. If you wanna take this bike into really tight situations where you're going slow, you're gonna struggle with the turning radius. I debated on whether or not to even talk about this, but these radiators are actually quite exposed, and I do think that if you had a bike like this, you would definitely need radiator braces. Some of the bikes out there, I don't think really require it, but if you wanted to protect, you probably would need to have some sort of bracing on this bike to protect these radiators, because they're just kind of out there flapping in the wind, and I think they could bend really easily. I've been super lucky and super careful, and I actually haven't even laid either one of these bikes down, so I haven't had a problem, but it's something that I thought about as soon as I was putting the whole bike together. Okay, moving on to a couple things that suck. I'm just gonna say it. The airbox on this Honda sucks. You have to have an 8mm socket to take this off, and it really helps to put it back on if the seat is off. You don't absolutely have to have this, like the seat off to do this, but this airbox, the way it works is just kind of sucky. Getting this off, it shouldn't be that hard. Okay, so now we've got it off. And now this is one of the tighter airboxes that you will find. It isn't like a total deal breaker, but I'm just saying, like of all the airboxes and things I've seen recently, this isn't among the best. It's functional and it works, but like putting this thing back on, and this air filter needs to be cleaned, but I think this needs to be toolless. I know this needs to be toolless. And then, like to put this back on, we're gonna try to get these tabs in there, and you're dealing with a thing down here, and you're like, oh, that little hook, this hanger has to be back there. This has gotta be kind of like this. I'm trying to like, okay, that there, and then slide that in, and then that there, and okay, so there. I just did it, and you watched me. The first time I did that, that took me like 5 frustrating minutes. This section of the bike needs to be redesigned because having a clean, properly fitted air filter is paramount on these motors, and it's the thing that you're going to be doing the very most as far as maintenance. Look at me spitting because I'm just like, I'm spitting mad here. You buy this bike as a $10,000, $11,000, maybe $12,000 bike, and the thing that is the very most important for you to do as far as maintenance is keeping a clean, well-fitted air filter in here, and they made it kind of a pain in the arse to do in comparison to some of the other bikes. Let's make it so this is toolless, and let's make it so this is a little bit more idiot-proof so that the kids and everyone out there is gonna actually change their air filter and not screw this up. The last thing I'll say that sucks is Showa did not give us finger clickers. You're still trying to put a screwdriver on that thing. I'm the type of guy that puts my bars forward. If you can see in this, see the handlebars are forward in the triple clamps. And that means that my bar is directly over that finger clicker, or I mean the clicker here, and it just makes it a pain in the butt to adjust this. I do not know why any of these fork manufacturers do not put a finger clicker here. I don't know why Honda wouldn't say, hey Showa, that's stupid, let's put a finger clicker on here. WP is the only suspension maker that's basically doing that by default, and that is stupid and that needs to change. So there you have it, that's my full review of these bikes. Man, if you want to support what we're doing on Dirt Bike Channel to make these reviews and all this stuff possible, please use the links to Rocky Mountain ATV down in the description. If you're watching this still and it's still June 30th or before midnight June 30th, you can still enter to win these bikes. I'm doing 2x entries through the end of the month and through the end of the sweepstakes, and this is awesome. So, and if you use my links to Rocky Mountain ATV, you get free entries to these bikes. If you want to go grab a shirt or grab tie downs or whatever else I have on my website, dirtbikechannel.com, it automatically enters you to win these bikes. The next thing up on the docket is a Sherco. I've got a Sherco 250 SE sitting outside, and I need to figure out at least one more thing. We'll probably do the next sweepstakes in September, so stay tuned for that. Man, I've loved having these bikes. I've loved getting back into the Honda vibe. There is something about Honda. I've certainly fallen back in love with Honda after having these two machines. I'm a two-stroke guy. I love being able to go in the mountains, do like soft enduro stuff, do a lot of wide variety of things. I love these bikes, but these are not, neither one of these bikes is a bike that I would choose to ride all year round. Although, there are certain days and certain rides in the desert or places or on a track that I would definitely take these bikes over my two-strokes because they definitely offer some serious advantages. You know, so yeah, I loved them both for different reasons. As you saw in the comparison video, 250 versus 450, if I could keep a two-stroke and have one of these as a backup bike, I would take the 450. This is it 450? Yeah, the 450. I would take the 450 here. If I had to ride only one bike all year long and it had to be one of the two, I would take the 250 version of that because that just seems to fit my style a little bit better. And anyway, so that's what I have for you guys. I don't know if you can tell, I don't know if you can hear the passion in my voice, but I absolutely love dirt bikes. I love this job and I love being able to help you and give some color to you guys as you're going out there to make some of these buying decisions. If you have any questions, email me, kyle@dirtbikechannel.com, and I will try to get back to you in a timely manner. Get in to win these beautiful bikes because time is very short. And if you're watching this after June 30th, hey, just know that we're doing sweepstakes all the time. And I think that's what I've got for you. So until next time, thank you so much and leave a single track.